It is 10:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. NFL Draft Weekend is behind us, and the Tennessee Titans brought in 9 new players over the course of 3 days in Vegas, including landing Liberty quarterback Malik Willis in the 3rd round on Friday. The Titans made 5 picks on day 3, keeping one prospect in state as former John Overton High School and Tennessee defensive back Theo Jackson was taken with the 204th pick in the 6th round. Other overall draft takeaways: Georgia football broke a record 15 players taken over the weekend. In front of a sellout crowd of over 30,000 at GEODIS Park on Sunday, Nashville Soccer Club opened its new home with a 1-1 draw against Philadelphia Union. Randall Leal scoring the club's first ever goal in GEODIS Park, netting a penalty kick equalizer in the 85th minute. NSC is home for its next 2 matches, back at it next Sunday against Salt Lake. John Morant put up 34 points and was 1 assist shy of a triple-double, but the Memphis Grizzlies dropped Game 1 at home against the Golden State Warriors on Sunday in a thriller, losing 117-116 in the Western Conference semifinals. They'll play Game 2 on Tuesday in Memphis. In the East, the Boston Celtics fell in a Game 1 rout against the Bucks, 101-89. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Happy to have you in today for the next 3 hours. We got a jam-packed loaded show, as is the custom on a Monday. Lucas Panzica, the man who never sleeps, never stops working, it would seem, fresh off of a Nashville Soccer Club show success. Back there making it happen. Mike Keith is going to be in the house later on in the show, and we'll also have Tony Husband, a couple of voices of local professional sports teams, hanging out with us today. We want you hanging out with us, too. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. 615-737-1045 is the number. Anything happen this weekend? Anything of great consequence?
Couple bullet points.
Just a couple of notes I've got written down throughout the course of the last couple of days, and quite a different vibe than when I walked into this studio on Friday. I think I have a little bit of different energy about me. I imagine, if you're a Titans fan, you do too. So, 9 new players in this NFL draft join the Tennessee Titans, and this was something that was going to take a lot of legwork. There are some new details that we will discuss as far as the A.J. Brown situation is concerned, because that was the root of the problem, right? It was unfortunate for Treylon Burks that he got caught up in the middle of a bleep storm, but this, especially given the market that A.J. went to, it's going to continue to hover over everything in football for the next couple of weeks. You're not going to be able to get it out of your life. Now, and that's not just on a local level. I'm talking about Philadelphia, major media market. You're going to see A.J. Brown press conferences on your television when you turn on the NFL Network and Sports Center. You're going to see debates being had. Today I see the guy who I wanted for our weekly Titans expert and analyst. I understand that is usually my purpose, but Kendrick Perkins, who picked the Titans to go to the Super Bowl last year, as I watch him on First Take this morning debating Stephen A. Smith. They're on jaw right now, but I promise you that there's going to be an A.J. Brown topic on the horizon. But then you get some new details by the time all of us got to the facility on Friday evening, and you go through the draft Friday and Saturday. You turned 7 picks into 9 players, 5 original selections, 2 compensatory. 6 on offense, 3 on defense, and potentially your future at quarterback. Now, that's no small detail in the middle of all of that, especially given the fact that the Tennessee Titans selected Malik Willis, roughly 60 picks after a lot of people thought that he may potentially go, or hell, 60 picks after the Titans could have taken him, 26 picks into the first round. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of ground that we have to cover, and a significant amount has changed since we did the radio show on Friday. I had a couple people tweet me, because I mean, Lucas, you can attest to this. I came in here pretty hot after Thursday night.
I tried to push back on it.
Yeah, but not because you were armed with information.
Nope.
Just because you were too. I don't. Well,
because you're trying to cut Treylon Brooks' career out from under him.
I was not trying to do that at all. I was trying to. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was pissed. You mean to tell me it took you this long to get a fun football player like A.J. Brown, and all of a sudden you're going to ship him off? What the hell? Especially with the information that we were armed with at the time. But that has since changed. And there was, I'm sure a lot of you saw it coming out from a handful of people in Titans media, be it myself, John Glennon, or Teron Davenport. I know Diana Rossini at ESPN did some good digging on this as well. And there will be plenty of time to discuss that. But the thing that kind of operates as the salve today, the thing that is going to ease your pain a little bit, because there was a full-on freakout when last we did the radio show. The thing that's going to make this a little better, at least as far as optics and off-season hope trafficking is concerned, is the aforementioned Malik Willis. I want you to hear from John Robinson as to why they drafted him when they did, because we made it 3 picks for them into day 2. He was the second of their third-round selections. And according to the Titans general manager, that was just an opportunity that was too good to pass up.
Well, you just never know what's going to go on behind you. You know, he was the best player on our board. We were a couple picks out. You're looking at the teams that are ahead of you, but you're also looking and being cognizant of the teams that are behind you, and the potential for somebody to come up, or a team in the 4th to come back in, to the 3rd there. So
his potential, and what do you think about where he is right now?
The quarterback, good arm, athletic, moves around well, got a really good skill set, throws a good ball. He's tough to tackle. He's got a lot of work to do, obviously, like all these rookies do. But excited to add him to the team and let him compete.
What's it say?
You mentioned he's got a lot of work to do. Is there 1 or 2 areas in particular that?
Well, it's just like, you're learning a new offense. You're coming in, and all these guys, whatever position they play, they're learning new terminology. They're learning new things. So how quickly he gets acclimated to that, and we'll probably determine how quickly he progresses.
That's John Robinson with us on Friday night, walking us through their selection of Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback, in the 3rd round. So, how do you feel about what the Titans got accomplished? Because the work is not yet done, and we'll give you a little bit of a refresher on who's still available, because you always knew there was going to be a post-draft free agency push, and how the market develops remains to be seen. But at 3 p.m. today, you're going to start seeing contract details fly again. Hell, I'm pretty sure, didn't Honey Badger sign with the Saints this morning? I believe I saw that. Tyrann Mathieu, Lucas, fact-check me.
Yeah, I have not seen that be official yet, but I have seen reports trending that way.
Yeah, but Ian Rappaport, right? I thought he had that this morning, as far as they had basically agreed, or they had agreed in principle. Please.
Yeah, he is expected to sign with the Saints.
Okay, expected to sign with the Saints, but, I expected A.J. Brown to re-sign with the Tennessee Titans, so it's not done until it's done. But you understand my point. 3 p.m. today, there will be a free agency push, and teams will continue to address draft needs. But as we sit here, looking at these players, each of them, not just the quarterback, even though that's the bright and shiny piece of all of this, that is the thing that I think people are going to gravitate most. 2 wide receivers, a corner in the 2nd round. You got an offensive tackle in Nicholas Petit-Frere out of Ohio State, potential quarterback of the future, or at least a more sustainable option, a higher upside option than what you currently have behind Ryan Tannehill. Depth behind Derrick Henry, a tight end whose draft comp was Jonnu Smith. They have a type. And a couple of defensive players in Theo Jackson and Chance Campbell, who can give you a lot on special teams. And if somebody like Theo Jackson ends up embracing the Dane Cruikshank role or something of the like, John Robinson has typically done pretty well with his day 3 picks. So, as we said, 6 offensive players, 3 defensive players, and less 1 A.J. Brown. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. Which of those 9 selections was your favorite? I understand there's going to be some love for the quarterback today, but there's a lot of interesting prospects that the Titans have just added to this roster. You're going to hear from a handful of them coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Hell yeah, we are. Welcome back on this Monday. Feeling good, bad, indifferent about the Tennessee Titans' new 9-man draft class. We can talk about it. 615-737-1045. In fact, I'm going to tell you who my favorite selection of these 9 players was from the weekend. We invite your participation as well. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. Lucas, have you selected a player that you like?
I have.
We want to do this together?
Let's do it.
Okay, very good. So, I am going to, since I get to start, since it's my game, I'm going to take the obvious one. Now, I can go in detail on each of these players, talk to them for about 10 to 12 minutes after they're selected. This is how it works for us when we draft at the facility, because I'm at the facility for all 3 days. Titans make a pick. They try and wrangle him. They send him a Zoom link. We all shuffle into a conference room. They throw the kid on the Zoom with us, and we ask him questions from the facility. So I can go, and we've got audio from each of these guys, or the major guys, that I think people are going to discuss. But I'm going to go with the obvious one. I'm going to go with Malik Willis as my favorite selection. Now, here's why. We understood that this was going to be a weaker quarterback class. And apparently, draft media, myself included, overestimated vastly just how little the league thought of these quarterbacks that were in front of us. Kenny Pickett, the only one of them to go in the first round. Desmond Ridder, I believe, was a third-round selection to the Atlanta Falcons. And then went Willis as the third quarterback off the board, but not until the 86th overall selection. There is no disputing that in this draft class, down bad as we may believe these quarterbacks to be, and we have no idea what they're going to all turn out to be over the course of their career. But 3 years down the road, we will in all likelihood be discussing Malik Willis as the quarterback who has been able to achieve at the highest level of this collection of players. Sam Howell, I believe, didn't go until the 5th or 6th round.
It was definitely day 3. Oh, gosh, who did he end up with? Was it Washington?
Yes, and I was laughing because our buddy John Ledyard at Pewter Report, one of the better scouts that we have working in media, Ledyard was rooting for anarchy because he was on Twitter saying this website when Sam Howell beats out Carson Wentz for the Commanders' starting quarterback job.
First incompletion. First interception thrown by Wentz. Shouts for Howell are coming down.
You don't think that's happening here?
1,000%. In fact, I have a poll question banked for later this week regarding exactly that.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Your story.
Working like, ahead.
You're like what kind of animal collects food before they hibernate? I don't know enough about the animal kingdom to be able to assess that. You're like a chipmunk. You're storing takes in your cheeks, preparing for the long, but in our case, it's not winter. In the case of hibernation, in that case, it's summer sports talk radio.
Yeah, put it in the bank. How long until Titans fans start screaming for Malik Willis? First incompletion, first interception. We'll work on it.
Well, it happened soon or quickly enough after the selection for Ryan Tannehill to put out the social media posts and wish AJ bye-bye and say, can't wait to get to work with Malik Willis and Treylon Burks after the selection of the quarterback. Which I don't know if it was just delightful coincidence or whatever, but that made me smile. But Malik Willis is my favorite of these selections. Treylon Burks may end up being the offensive rookie of the year because who the hell else is Tannehill going to throw to at this point? There are interesting players now on this roster, but none of whom, other than Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and I guess if you want to consider Jeff Swaim, which we cannot discount, but you're talking about in the same way that the 2021 defense had 6 new starters here in Tennessee, potentially 6 new offensive starters for this Titans 2022 offense. It's the exact same thing. Think it needs an oil change? Build a new engine. And that's kind of the direction that they're heading. Now, the core of this is still Tannehill and Henry. So, for the most part, you're just working with a little bit of a refurbished model. But as Ryan Tannehill has to create chemistry with all of these dudes. Hooper, Woods, Burks, Phillips, the day 3 selection out of UCLA, who I think has great potential to be the Adam Humphries role that never really materialized because of his struggles with concussions, unfortunately, for Adam. And it was good to see him kind of rebound, or at least, hopefully with proper medical advice, get back into the league, I believe, as a Washington Commander or football team player for a hot second. Regardless, Burks is my favorite of these 9 picks because of the value, because of the upside, and because you can if you feel comfortable with his development.
You mean Willis?
What did I say?
You said Burks.
Willis. Because of his value, because of his upside, and because if you feel comfortable and confident enough about him after year 1, even though it's probably going to be a limited sample size, you can offload $30 million next year.
Not just about the player, right? You said value, about where he's taken, because this isn't the conversation if he's taken at 26 or at 35.
If they trade A.J. Brown, get the 18th pick, and take Malik Willis, I'm as pissed off, I'm as mad or more angry than I was on Friday when I walked in here and started breathing fire in front of the microphone.
I think even at 35, it's a different conversation with that 3rd pick of the 2nd round that they acquired from the Jets.
Right, who ended up being Roger McCreary and almost started another bleep storm. A corner from Auburn in the 2nd round? What's this say about Caleb Farley? The takes were flying fast and furious. But yeah, I'm a Willis guy. But Tannehill is going to be the starting quarterback. How this progresses is another matter entirely.
I'm going to say Kyle Phillips, who you kind of brought up just now, because of the opportunity that he gives them to have something they have not had consistently, to lock down a reliable slot receiver option and a reliable punt returner. That was a big bonus to his draft grade. Kyle Phillips, number 18 receiver in Dane Brugler's The Big Beast draft board leading up to the draft. I really liked what I heard from him, too, in the media availability. I could see why Mike Vrabel and John Robinson were a little bit infatuated with him in interviews.
Now, we don't win the press conference, okay, because Isaiah Wilson has a big and goofy laugh. And,
sure, but
don't give me that as the...
You can always win. That's not the reason, but you can always win the press conference.
I'd like you to hear from Malik Willis about the patience required for him, because he's obviously not going to see the field right away. This was the Titans' rookie quarterback when we spoke to him on Friday.
Oh, I mean, understanding that, it comes with it. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is a great player, and he's a great leader for this organization. So I just want to come in and, just do all I can in order to get better at my craft. And whenever that time comes for me to get on the field, and that time will come. But until then, I'm just going to try to learn and be the best teammate I can be.
If he doesn't pan out, because I don't want to put unfair expectations on him, he's just coming to a circumstance that I think is uniquely equipped to allow him to be a good NFL player than had he landed somewhere else in the first round, higher in the first round, with a bad football team, right? 615-737-1045. Who is your favorite selection of these Titans 9 players, these 9 rookies? We'll get to your phone calls here in just a second. He may not be the future at quarterback, Malik Willis. And here's why that's okay. Because they didn't take him 26th. Because they didn't take him 35th. Because they got it. The board broke in a way that allowed him to land to them, or at least close enough to them, in the 80s, in the high 80s, to where they said, yeah, we'll go ahead and jump up, get the quarterback in the 3rd round. If he pans out, gravy. If he doesn't, hey, we tried. I think it's as no lose a proposition at that position as humanly possible. Would you like him to develop? Would you like him to have a substantial NFL career? Would you like him to take over at some point, probably in the near future? Of course you would. But he doesn't have to when he's the 2nd of their 3rd round picks. It is precious little risk at 86 and with all the potential of reward humanly possible. That's why I like the Malik Willis selection. Jordan is in Nashville up first. Good morning, Jordan.
Hey, Buck, to that point, on Friday I called in and said that the Titans definitely needed to draft a quarterback because of the trade of A.J. Brown, and we need to start rebuilding for the future after this season. And you commented that you disputed that notion that we don't need to draft a quarterback and that Titans fans would lose their minds if we draft a player that did not play the season.
At 26. At 26,
yeah,
Jordan, right?
It was in the second and third round, Friday night. It was that we needed to go ahead and draft one of the quarterbacks because they all fell down. And you disputed that notion, but Malik Willis is your guy. Like, what's up with that?
It's completely fair criticism. Look at him; he's pissed.
What's up with that?
So here's why, and that's a completely fair criticism, because I don't recall the call specifically, but I recall my position. If they're not good enough to take him at 26, I believe I said Friday, don't take him, right? I believe that's an exact quote. Now I'm talking a lot, so I assume that I said that on the radio show. I'm quite certain that I did, as opposed to somewhere else. But I'm pretty sure my position was, if he's not good enough for you at 26, don't take him at all. But at the time, I thought that at least 3 of these guys were going to go in the first round. I think the league, well, not the league, not the coaches, not the organizations. Maybe some of them did think that, and then once they saw the precipitous fall of all of these guys, you started to adapt your opinion, saying, okay, let's ride this thing out. I thought that you would see Kenny Pickett. I thought that you would see Malik Willis. I thought you would see, depending on which team selected them, Sam Howell or Desmond Ridder, all be first-round picks. Probably no more. I think we set the over-under at 3.5 for quarterbacks drafted in the first round. And so as that situation developed, I think that the opinion should evolve with new information as it comes available. I'm not saying that I was incorrect. I'm not saying that I was not. I don't want to use a double negative. I'm trying to be grammatically correct. You can pounce on me for saying what I said on Friday, and I'm still comfortable with having the position. Yeah, if Malik Willis is at 86 as opposed to 6, where we all thought he might go with the Carolina Panthers, hell yeah, let's ride. That's how I thought the situation developed. Now, did I think they could have taken advantage? I'm not saying that they did a perfect job. They didn't. As far as, and they care precious little what I think, but I thought that where they got Phillips, it's going to work in their favor. But I still felt that the upside of a lot of these other receivers, just as I did last year before they traded up to get Des Fitzpatrick, I would have preferred them take a wide receiver, probably before Kyle Phillips. Kyle Phillips may end up going on to have a productive NFL career here. In fact, it was funny to listen to Kyle Phillips describe who he watched as a player, because he gave us 4 specifics. He had a list. He was ready. Because players hardly ever answer this question. Hey, who do you like? Who do you watch and try to add things to your game to? And then you'll get the cliche answer. Well, I don't really pay attention to other stuff because I'm just going to be me. And that may all well be in good, except if you're Kyle Phillips, who had a list.
Yeah, so I say I'd have 4 main ones. I'd say just Cole Beasley and Hunter Renfrow, just in the slot, how they run routes. I love how intentional they are with their stems, eyes, head movement, all that stuff. Next, Keenan Allen at the top of his route. He's got a little skip step that he frees the DBs with, and I've been able to add that to my game, and love that a lot. And then lastly would be Devontae Adams with his release package. I really love his split release, so I've been able to add that to my game a little bit.
So that's Kyle Phillips. Now, you may look at Kyle Phillips, and by the way, don't do just because this started in the media draft room that we had. Don't dismiss Kyle Phillips when he says, yeah, I watched Devontae Adams and I like his release package, so I try to incorporated that into my game. I think he said, I've been able to add that to my game. I'm sure that Kyle Phillips, even as confident as a future current professional athlete as he may be, does not think that he has the same release package abilities as Devontae Adams, because it started a debate in the media draft room. And I think that's because of the way Kyle Phillips looks. And, don't dog whistle on yourself if you're going to do that. But I love the answer, because you could see when he describes those things, You can go watch Devontae Adams, because I did a little bit of this over the weekend. It's the only reason we ask players this question. Hey, so I can understand who you try and watch and who you try and use to your advantage as far as film study is concerned, to where I see it in your game, kind of give us a little bit of an example. And he went point by point. It's not Devontae Adams, but you can see what he's talking about when you go watch UCLA tape.
You don't get that nuance very often when it comes to player interviews right after the biggest moment of their life, being drafted with the media. You don't get that type of specific nuanced take on pulling those details from 4 different players in one answer.
California kid, baby. He's laid back. He's relaxed. He's putting out sponsored pizza posts, because I think he had an NIL deal at UCLA. He was real comfortable with us, and I'm sure the Titans will suck the life out of that very, very soon.
Can run after the catch, Kyle Phillips.
Well, this is the thing. Because this was a question I had for John Robinson on, what was that, Saturday, after the draft had concluded. Because you go through the players here. Again, Burks, Willis, Petit Frere isn't a skill position player, but you understand what I'm saying about the quarterbacks and skill position players. Malik Willis, Chig Okonkwo, the Maryland tight end, Kyle Phillips, they're all hard as hell to tackle. You know who likes players like that? The Tennessee Titans, who are going to be bigger, faster, stronger than you. And they're going to get yards after contact, and they're going to get yards after the catch, and they're going to break a couple of tackles in the meantime. Now, maybe it's not A.J. dragging 4 Baltimore Ravens into the end zone with him in 2020, but if you can do something like Jonnu used to with Chig, gravy. 615-737-1045. Tony is up next on 1045 The Zone. Who was your favorite pick of the draft?
Well, Traylon Burks was my favorite player of the draft. I think that was a really great addition. The problem with that is that you lost probably one of the best wide receivers to ever come through the franchise. I would venture to say that this is what's happened with the Titans and John Robinson as of late with the franchise. There's been bust, if not one per year, multiple per year. And I had compiled a list of guys that I had thought I'd bring to your attention that this has happened to before. And speaking in the quarterback position specifically, you had Jake Walker at the 8th pick. You had Vince Young that was not that – I mean, he was great, but he wasn't great. It was ended up being a bust for the franchise. Marcus Mariota isn't playing anywhere right now. You've had bad picks with off-the-field activities with Isaiah Wilson and Adam Pac-Man Jones. You try to get good wide receivers. You go out and get busts like Joey Kent or Dorial Green Beckham or, God forbid, Kendall Wright. There have been a slew of bad picks in the positions that the Titans have desperately needed. The only good stretch that I can remember was back in, 98 to 2003, where your first-round picks were Dyson, Kearse, Bullock, Haynesworth, and then Wolford. So it hasn't been that great lately. I'm very optimistic. The best pick in franchise history for the Titans. Way back in 1960.
Does he sound like he's yelling over the music? You think he's trying to fight through it? Thanks for the call, Tony. 60 seconds on the clock and you get the Oscars music. Lists are probably not the most effective strategy when it comes to trying to beat the clock. I will give you that advice moving forward.
But Tony is optimistic.
Okay. I don't – it would be – you can't – here's the problem with draft stuff, right? Like – and this was what you were trying to caution me on Friday when I came in here, A.J. Brown traded meltdown, because I thought at the time, and I had asked them about this and was told, don't comment on contract details, even though A.J. had commented on his own contract details. And we got a whole bunch of information on that to discuss. Yeah, okay, you can be optimistic about John Robinson as a general manager. Pretty good at this. Now, draft specific. And I mean, I guess, Lucas, what was the point of the list that he was trying to give us? Like, because he was listing a bunch of picks that were not John Robinson. I don't care about what Jake Locker has no bearing on our conversation today, other than the fact that you look at a situation like John's circumstance, say, yeah, he hadn't done well in the first round.
Yeah, but
you're not getting compensatory picks next year because the players that you let walk this year sucked. One of them being Rashaan Evans, who signed a 1-year deal as a former first-round pick.
But in fairness, a lot of the conversation about letting A.J. Brown go was this franchise has never been able to nail down an elite receiver. since it moved to Nashville. None of that had anything to do with John Robinson, but we still brought it into the conversation, and it was also a huge reason why you had this huge emotional reaction from Titans fans.
John Robinson fixed the damn problem. What are the two things? What were the two things that were glaring, horrendous when John took the job? Secondary? Secondary was real bad. Real bad. And wide receivers. And what did he do? All of a sudden you end up with MMCMB for a couple of years at great value and with an influence of young talent that materialized in ways that one of them being a couple of time All-Pro, and with wide receivers, probably one of the better collections of wide receivers that they have had on one Titans team at any given point, with Adam Humphries, though he did not last, Corey Davis, and A.J. Brown. I understand, like, if you're going to cite precedent, we got 7 years of John Robinson now, 7 drafts of John Robinson to do that. I don't care about anything that came before that. Understanding that may be the reason why a lot of people are bent out of shape still about AJ being gone.
But just remember, you did use that as a reason for refuting moving on from AJ Brown, right? That was a big part of your argument on Friday, was this franchise has not been able to nail down an elite wide receiver, and you get one and you let him go.
That was when I thought they offered him $16 million and didn't try to keep him.
Right.
I have new information on that we will get into later on in the show. But I'll pull my Mike Vrabel and say thank you for throwing my words back at me, Lucas. Next, we have Tony Husband, because Nashville SC opened up GEODIS Park yesterday. Lucas was there. I was there. Tony called the game. It was a spectacle. Tony's going to be in here to describe that spectacle coming up next. Okay. So it was a big Nashville sports weekend across the board. NFL draft dominating a lot of the coverage, and we'll continue that. Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, will be in here in just about 14 minutes from now. But in the meantime, pre or post draft, I got to come up for air. 3 days at the facility. I got to have a break and to see the sun, and I went and did it at GEODIS Park for Nashville SC's home opening match at their brand new park, the largest soccer-specific stadium in the country. Lucas was there. He did a great pregame show with Will Bowling, and our buddy Tony Husband was on the call yesterday for the inaugural match at GEODIS Park. And I thought Tony's in studio with us. Lovely to see you.
Great to see you.
I was telling you, Lucas corrected me. I did go to last season's home opener. But outside of that, I don't go to a lot of sporting events as a fan, Tony, and I had a kick-ass time.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the match itself, the environment, the spectacle, how excited people were to be there. I don't know how much you got to see and be a part of it, because I know that you're doing a lot before the broadcast and, of course, during. But that whole deal, it was phenomenal. Chef's kiss.
You needed this as well, didn't you? I mean, I know
so
you were
badly.
steaming on Friday. You know, I mean, after Thursday night, you needed this. And I thought, what an irony. It's a team from Philadelphia coming to Nashville to open GEODIS Park. I mean, this is great.
Yeah. Oh no, I had some heat for the Philly. There was a ton of Philly supporters up in the top corner.
Right next to us.
They traveled well. It was a really, really good thing. Yeah, but I wanted Nashville SC to kick the holy hell out of Philadelphia just to take out the angst that I had built up on Friday.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, it was a great day, though. And like you say, I mean, I was there quite early, and there was a fantastic buzz around the place. It felt like it was a kind of a cup final day back in England. You know that this is more than just a match. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a regular season match. It's hard to believe that when we think back on it. It was a true occasion, for Nashville sports history, and I hope people will look back on it for years to come. And I think all in all, it went pretty well. I mean, okay, we would have loved a winner in that final minute. I thought when the referee went to have a look at his monitor under that wonderful little black umbrella on the far side of the field, I thought he's gonna make the call, and he's gonna change his call on the field, and he's gonna give the spot kick. And he didn't. I mean, that would have been the fairy tale finish to everything to overturn it. But they ran into the best goalkeeper in the league by a country mile. Andre Blake is the best goalkeeper in the league.
Absolute stud.
Yeah.
I could not believe some of the saves he was making.
Yeah, he has been a thorn in Nashville's side in the penalty shootout last year in the playoffs back in Philadelphia last November, which ended Nashville's season last year in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And then yesterday, you come up against him, and immediately early on, as soon as he made his first great save from an Alex Will, thunderbolt from the edge of the box, it's almost that reminder, oh, shucks, Andre Blake's playing for Philadelphia here, isn't he? We're not going to get past him. And then, I mean, Randall Leal's spot kick, the penalty kick in the second half, I mean, he had to put that right in the corner because Blake was going to get to that as well if it wasn't perfectly placed.
I mean, he was that close. He was right there.
Yeah.
Guy was unbelievable. By the way, Nashville SC back at GEODIS Park this coming Sunday, 4 p.m. kickoff is where you can go. You can check it out on ESPN Plus. Of course, you can see Tony on the broadcast, MyTV30, and stream it at NashvilleSC.com/stream. I thought there was a lot of people from my standpoint, because it's a 1-to-1 draw, and I went into that thinking, okay, as long as I have a good time, because I'm taking notes for basically radio on my, because I'm gonna go, I'm gonna talk about this. I want to be able to tell people my experience. Thought the whole thing was great. Other than getting out of the stadium, which is something that we can talk about, because the soccer itself, I was pleased with. And I thought a lot of people, like our buddy Ron Slay, and I got some smoke for Slay and 3HL, because they got on Twitter and were talking about how should I feel about a 1-1 draw, all these things. I thought they were telling on themselves, because I don't think they watched that damn game. Because I don't think you could feel any way but good about the way that Nashville SC performed if you watched that game start to finish and saw the level of competition on the field.
Yeah, I mean, they were playing a good team as well. Philadelphia, the best team in the opening weeks of this Major League Soccer season. These two teams knew each other very well as well. There's never been much between them, so it was always likely to be a close game.
Yeah.
the one thing that Gary Smith's teams do is that they have incredible resilience. They fight back, and it wasn't in a sense a surprise that they managed to get back and get something from this game. So from a position of being 1-0 down in your home opener with this huge crowd, this huge occasion, the pressure on their shoulders. Well, if you are going to be 1-0 down and you're coming towards the end of the game, if you can take a point, that's a good point in the end.
Yeah.
And you've got 16 more home games to come, and clearly they're going to want some wins from those. But in the end, a good point against a good team. And in some ways for the players, the newness is gone now. Next week, Real Salt Lake, got to go out there and, everything about the first day will have gone. This is now the office. Let's get the job done, and they'll really want the 3 points. And, just tell me briefly, though, what you thought of it outside, because obviously I didn't see what it was like outside the venue.
I could not have had an easier time getting in. I did not wait very long at all to get physically into GEODIS. I was walking around. I was taking some pictures. I talked to a couple people that listened to the show. They were good enough to come up, and I was asking them about their experience. The only thing that I had, Tony, I had spent a long time since I've waited in a concession line, and I don't understand how people live that way. I don't understand how they do it. That's the only thing, but that's like, first world problems. That and the fact that we were not prepared for the journey out of GEODIS Park. But everything from start to finish, I thought the park itself, our season tickets, Lucas and I got tickets together. We're in the 200 level, and I love the like straight drop. I had somebody from the Titans staff, Robbie Boren, their PR director, he's a season ticket holder too, was talking to me about if you've been to the Ryman and you've seen a show in the upper deck at the Ryman, it's got that same field, except it's a stadium, a soccer pitch with 30,000 people going absolutely nuts. The only thing that I noticed is that we don't know what to do yet. As a fan base, we don't know what to do, like during the course of a game.
We're making history here. That's the thing. So you can decide.
Oh, sure. Because there was some poor bastard in the top section trying to get some chants going, and everybody just kind of looking around like, hey, do we get in rhythm? How do we do this? Do we start the wave? It's very.
Should we try another one?
Don't
do the wave. Don't do the wave.
That's what I'm saying. It's a very American problem. We lack creativity when it comes to our sporting events.
Now the wave is very much a Mexican fanhood type of thing, right?
So absolutely.
A lot of times that'll come from that. But
sadly, I'm old enough to remember when the Mexican wave began.
I think they legitimately invented the wave at stadiums.
Okay.
But I'd say about 50%, about 15 of the 30,000 people, that adds up, right? 50% of that knew what to do in the context that you're talking about, right? And then the other 50% are the people that are coming and checking out a game for the first time and are probably going to want to come back after that experience.
They don't know what they're doing. They don't necessarily know all the ins and outs, the nuances of what it is that they're watching, but it's a historic event. You want to be a part of it. And if you get a good performance out of it, gravy. I had a great time.
Maybe we need some kind of like a choir sheet, or a hymn sheet, and we can hand it to you when you come in. Say, these are the songs, these are the chants, and this is how you do it. But just follow the backlines lead at the other end. Stephen Robinson and all that backline group who've been there since day one. And for them, what a day this must have been yesterday. These fans who watched this club when it was, literally just a part-time club, and playing at fields around Nashville.
Playing at Vanderbilt's lacrosse field.
Exactly. Amazing.
And Ben Wright, who covers them for Broadway Sports is where Ben writes. He had a great 4-picture shot of the first 4 years of this thing's existence, and how, it's one of those how it started, how it's going tweets, right?
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. I mean, that has to, especially for you, sitting there with Jamie in the booth, overseeing all of this, that has to kind of hit a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? And you said about you don't go to a lot of sports events as a fan these days, and I'm the same.
Sure.
Most of the time I'm working at them. And I actually said to our CEO at the NDNA, I said, Ian, you get a bit cynical when you're walking in with your press pass at places, and you perhaps don't soak it up as much as the supporters do. Do you know what? Yesterday, I was awake at about 5:30 in the morning. I was as excited as I've been to go to a sports event as I have been for a long, long time, even though I was working the event.
Yeah.
And I think that says everything about just the build up to this. This is just a great moment for this club, and to continue to grow in the city and to be part of the sporting fabric of the city. And I think it absolutely nailed it and hit the spot yesterday. And now it's a case of, right, let's continue that progression on the field with a good team that's got a good chance of achieving something this year, but also with a stadium now that everyone can be proud of for years to come.
Our guy Tony Husband, the voice and television face of Nashville SC, here with us in studio. My TV 30 is where you can see the broadcast. The next match coming up this Sunday, 4 p.m. at GEODIS Park. Tickets, single game tickets, available now. We had a couple of we sat next to a couple of people we thought were season ticket holders like ourselves. They decided, hey, it's a good day to go see a soccer game. It can be a good day to go see a soccer game on Sunday. We hope to see a lot of you guys out there. Tony, on the way out the door, and I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us.
No problem.
What do people need to be paying attention for Sunday's match?
Well, this is Real Salt Lake, who beat Nashville in the first game between these two teams earlier in the season. They caught Nashville cold early on with a set-piece goal, so Nashville are going to, they know what the threat can be from this Real Salt Lake team. But Salt Lake have had a dip in recent times, so you've got to look at this and feel that having got that first game out of the way, this is a big opportunity for Nashville to take 3 points. They'll want to do that. They'll want to get that first win at the new stadium, and they'll want to get it quickly. And you look at the likes of Hani Mukhtar's just signed his extension to his contract. He will be itching to get his first goal at GEODIS Park.
He had a couple of good chances, baby.
Yeah.
I was rooting for him yesterday.
Yeah, he will want to get on that score sheet. It should be a good game. Probably not. These two sides won't match up quite the same way as Philly and Nashville did, so it could be a bit more open in places. I'd expect a good game, and I'm really hoping, and I'm rooting for what I think will be Nashville's first win at GEODIS Park.
At Tony Husband is where you follow him on social media. Make sure you check out the broadcast if you can't get to GEODIS Park, but I would highly recommend it because it was a tremendous time. But it's good of you to come in.
See you again soon.
From one voice of the city to another, Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, coming up next.
It is 11:04. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. NFL Draft Weekend is behind us, and the Tennessee Titans brought in 9 new players over the course of the 3 days in Las Vegas, including landing Liberty quarterback Malik Willis in the 3rd round on Friday. The Titans made 5 picks on day 3, keeping 1 prospect in state, as former John Overton High School and Tennessee defensive back Theo Jackson was taken with the 204th overall pick in the 6th round. Another draft takeaways, Georgia football breaking a record with 15 players taken over the course of the weekend. In front of a sellout crowd of over 30,000 at GEODIS Park on Sunday, Nashville Soccer Club opened its new home with a 1-1 draw against Philadelphia Union. Randall Leal scoring the club's first ever goal in GEODIS Park, netting a penalty kick equalizer in the 85th minute.
Randall Leal via the goalkeeper's gloves. Nashville with their first home goal at GEODIS Park are off and running.
That is John Champion with the ESPN call. NSC is home for its next 2 matches, back at it next Sunday against Real Salt Lake. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 off and rolling. Let me not do the whole wind-up like we normally do, because we got Nashville royalty in the house. Mike Keith, the Hall of Famer, voice of the Tennessee Titans, fresh off a wild and crazy draft weekend. My friend, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Buck. Thanks for having me in.
I'm happy to do so. I am dying to know how you experienced the last couple of days of Titans coverage, because draft is always a difficult thing to navigate, especially when you are on the broadcast and you have so many moving parts. I thought you guys did a great job Thursday and Friday with Titans Radio. It was really, really well done, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rounds. But what was that like to go through for you, Mike? Because that's an unpredictable thing under normal circumstances, and this year was a bit of a shakeup.
It really is unpredictable based on the fact that you try to get everything ready that you possibly can. And we did this year something different. We did the Coach Mac 150, which we talked about on the OTP, the official Titans podcast. Sort of knowing that we were going to have 105 guys come off the board in the first 3 rounds, we felt like if we got him to pick his top 150 prospects, we would probably hit them all. And so you're like, okay, we're really prepared for this. We're ready to go. We interviewed over 50 prospects between Senior Bowl Combine and other opportunities. We went to Cincinnati's Pro Day, which was a place where we felt like we could get in, get great stuff from Luke Fickell, and have a chance to meet some of their players, and they had a record-setting draft for the Bearcats. So we did a lot of different things. And yet it still ends up being wilder. You try to prepare the best you can, like you're taking a test, and it still just ends up being, I think for me, it's the craziest 24 hours I've had in 24 years on the job.
OTP, the official Titans podcast, there is going to be a new one available in your podcast feed. You can get the draft recap from Mike Keith and Coach Mac and Rhett Bryant's perspective. Really, really good stuff. All of the Titans Radio content and conversation presented by our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plan, and many thanks to them for making our draft coverage, as well as everything that Titans Radio does, possible. So, from Traylon Burks, I know you were on the radio on Friday talking about it. The whole A.J. Brown situation goes crazy, and it seems like over the next 2 days, they just put their heads down in the draft room and said, okay, it's done. You got to move forward. We've got needs to address. You still need wide receiver, still need tight end. You end up with a quarterback in a situation where I don't know how many people expected that quarterback specifically to be. I felt they did as good a job as humanly possible trying to make that thing go and make the fan base, I know it doesn't matter feelings necessarily, but at least to kind of salve it a little bit from the hurt that people were initially feeling.
Yeah, people took it hard.
Sure.
And I understand because I loved covering A.J. Brown. I was excited when we drafted him. I understand what kind of player and what kind of person he is. But the business side of it is the harder part of the job that we do when we work with these players and with these coaches at different times, because you understand things are going to come up. And something obviously came up. He had a very different impression of how, he wanted a contract structure than what the Titans felt like they could do. I think they came to the conclusion that there was not going to be a negotiation, that it was just, this is just not going to happen.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the details of that later on in the show.
Yeah.
Today.
I mean, you can go through 3 months of this or 6 months of this, or do you want to say this is going to be too big a problem and it's going to be a bridge too far? And so what we're going to do is we're going to be bold and say, we're not going to let this overtake us. We're going to do something to where we can handle it as well as we possibly can and come out of it with other answers. And I think that's what they did. I mean, when you view this draft and you look at how the picks were manipulated, and again, I think a strong part of this is you have to go back and think about what it would have looked like if they'd have just had 26 and 90.
Yeah.
And they don't get Malik Willis if that happens.
It's such a long gap between 26 and 90.
It's not just a long gap, but they really probably can't take him at that point because there are things that they would have had to have done. They had to come out with an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
They obviously, once they made the trade, they had to come out with a receiver. They felt like they needed a frontline corner. You don't get the frontline corners on day 3. You just, in most cases, that just doesn't happen. And so as you delve into it, they took care of what they needed to do and came away with more, taking a difficult situation and, lemons and making lemonade, I think.
Sure. So Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're going through the draft class, the 9 new Tennessee Titans that were added over the course of the 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Official Titans podcast. You can catch the full reaction in much greater detail than we will be able to do here, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. For Malik Willis, there are going to be a lot of Titans fans who are invested in him right out of the gate. It's a bright, shiny thing, a new quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said, Mike, on Friday, after the AJ situation, that if there was not a quarterback good enough to be drafted at 26, I prefer them to just address as many of those holes that still remained on offense as humanly possible. I never thought that dude would be there at 86.
Ever.
He is such an interesting prospect because I don't think he has to be the future of quarterback for that to be a good decision, because the value and the upside, that is difficult to match, even if this was a down bad quarterback class. What did you think of the selection?
I loved it. I loved it because this is a guy with the traits. I don't know if he ever plays it down.
No.
I'm not a quarterback expert, but I think for the risk, this is a phenomenally great risk because of what the gifts of this young man are. He was clearly the most gifted of anybody in this class. And the fact that he's going to play in an offense that runs the football. And he's going to play on a football team that plays defense. So this is not a guy that's going to be asked, as he learns this thing, to throw 60 times a game and have everything on him.
He's not Trevor Lawrence.
He's not Trevor Lawrence. That's exactly right. He's got a lot of people on offense to be able to help him. He's got Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator. He's got Pat O'Hara, who is an outstanding quarterback coach. He's got Tim Kelly, who's going to help him coordinate the passing game. And he's got Ryan Tannehill in a room with him. And he's got Logan Woodside in a room with him. And so all of these things are set up for him to have the best chance to be successful. And that's all you can ask. So when you draft a prospect like this, at that point, and let's face it, everybody's seen him. Everybody knows him. He was a massive high school prospect coming out of the Atlanta area. He went to Auburn. He goes to Liberty. I mean, I get it. And we're going to be naive if we sit and tell everybody, now calm down. Calm down.
I can't.
I
can't calm down.
Well,
but
I'm saying, but everybody's going to hear. I mean, that's going to be the overriding message.
Yeah.
But people aren't going to calm down. They're going to be interested to see everything he does, and I think you've already seen from his makeup, he gets who he is.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed by any of that.
And I think the added benefit of this, because you've covered a lot of quarterbacks as being here from day one, you've seen how the situation has evolved and changed over time. I think that an added benefit of this, Mike, is that just competition among professional athletes can help bring out a better version of themselves. Or, it's a kill or be killed type of situation. I think that this can be a huge benefit to Ryan Tannehill. It's not Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't expect Ryan Tannehill to rattle off back-to-back NFL MVPs because he's pissed. I don't think that's the way that this is going to go down. But I think that this is a best-case scenario because you have brought in legitimate competition, even as he's not going to be expected to do much of anything out of the gate. But that can help elevate the guy who's currently the incumbent.
And everybody has to elevate.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to do what we want to do, everybody has to elevate on the football team. Everybody.
Yeah.
So, it's never a bad thing that you get any motivation to elevate. And I think Tannehill returns to be a motivated player right now. I think he returns understanding what the job is and where we want to get to.
He's been through it before.
He's been through it before. He's seen it. He's not a young guy. But at the same time, I mean, does Malik Willis get your attention? Sure, I would think so.
He's going to get everybody's attention.
Right.
Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, here with us on 104.5 The Zones. Now, Mike, you did the Senior Bowl. You were on the call for the actual game itself. I know you talked, as you said, to a great many prospects for that and Titans radio leading up through it. When you go about your prep, was there a player that they ended up selecting whose film you remembered watching or whose story you remember putting together throughout the course of this process that you thought, okay, this really, really makes sense for what they've just added, given who this organization is right now?
Roger McCreary.
Okay.
This is a really good football player.
Baked beans.
He is, if Bush's Baked Beans doesn't hire him, they're making a big mistake.
He doesn't need the NFL money. He's got the NIL money from Bush's.
He should have the NIL money from Bush's. This is a guy who, when you watched him at Auburn, you understood that he was a lead dog at corner and that he's just not afraid of anybody, just not scared of anybody. Think about the Malcolm Butler attitude.
Street rat.
Yeah, that he is just going to play you and that he's going to keep going. I saw him at the Senior Bowl get beat, and he came back. He's like, fine, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And that's what this game is. I mean, you give up 65% completions in the NFL, but can you make the big play to get off the field on third down? Can you make the game-changing play? Can you come up and make the tackle in a certain situation? Difference makers. I think Roger McCreary is a difference-making player that I think fits the mindset of not just this football team, but this defense and its scheme.
Mike Vrabel seemed to echo that sentiment. Mike Vrabel spoke on the drafting of Roger McCreary, the Titans' second-round pick corner out of Auburn, when we spoke to him on Friday night.
He covers his guy. I know when you press play, he's close to his guy, and he's competitive, no nonsense. Came in, sat down, talked. I mean, every tape that we watched, he was close to his guy. They all get beat, but it was fun watching him in that Alabama game, and those guys are all, got drafted, high, so he was covering them pretty well.
If you can play Alabama receivers like Roger McCreary did, I went back and watched that game after Vrabel said something about that. And the film, I mean, it jumps out at you.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a flat-out competitor.
Well, he's from Mobile. He went to Williamson High School. He was not a highly recruited player. He had not played corner until he got to Auburn. He had to get on the field via special teams, and he just kept improving and kept improving. There's a humility about him along with the toughness. He gets that he's going to have to come in here and work. He doesn't think I'm an elite athlete mentally that I'm going to be treated like a superstar. He thinks I'm a good player and I want to prove what I can do, but I'm going to have to work. And so you put him in probably a lot of different situations. And Buck, you're going to have to draft receivers and corners every year, every single year, for what the demand is, for how many of them you play, and for what the overriding cost is. You're going to have to continue to churn. Again, with corners, it's going to be a lot about day 1 and day 2.
Yeah.
Because that's where the real players are. And to get him at 35 was a great value.
Well, the reason why a contingent of Titans fans, Mike, you're smart not to be on Twitter like the rest of us, and thank goodness that it's not the real world. But I think a lot of people started to jump to assumptions or make assumptions about Caleb Farley because they took a Titan.
Has nothing to do with that.
In the second round.
Has nothing to do with Caleb Farley.
And I think that I felt much differently about that after I went back and watched some of the games that Mike and John were discussing, because it's easy to make that assumption, but I think that's unfair to both of those players.
I'll bet you a quarter that they'll take a corner on day 1 or day 2 as long as John Robinson is here.
They've done it.
And well, you've got to have them, because they're going to be so expensive, as you see receiver salaries go up, Buck, you're going to see corner salaries continue to go up.
Sure.
Because this is where, if receivers are becoming marquee players in this way, then you need guys who can stop them. And you play 5 defensive backs a majority of snaps. You're starting to see 6 defensive backs. We've seen situations where the Titans have had 6 corners on the field at one time with Kevin Byard. Teams are going to run scheme-specific packages, in particular on third down, because that's your real chance. Everybody's going to move the football.
Right.
Everybody's going to move the football. But when you get a chance to get off the field on third down or to get a stop in the red zone and make somebody kick out a field goal, that's what this game is all about, because all of the rules are set for offense. So how do you stop that? You have enough guys who can make the one play. They can have 10 good plays in a row, but if you tip a ball away on third down and make them kick a field goal, that's a win.
Yeah, without question. Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, the official Titans podcast, new episode from Titans Radio's perspective through the draft process, through the first 3 rounds that they covered on the air. And of course, it's just it's going to be an enjoyable listen. Mike, I appreciate you stopping by. I know you're under it right now. It's always good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Buck. Thanks for having me in the studio.
That's Mike Keith, voice of the Titans. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll get into the details on some of these new players that you need to learn coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Welcome back here on the show. Hope you're having a great day so far. Great start to your week. Titans off and rolling with this offseason. Now actual players to discuss. Lot of things to cover. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. So you got the insight from Mike Keith. And I know he talked about his experience with the A.J. Brown trade, announcing that in real time to a ballroom full of Titans season ticket members and people who pay a lot of money for their tickets. A lot of people were pissed. But over the course of the next 2 days, it seemed that, I don't want to say that the AJ thing kind of got put on the back burner, because I was able to do some reporting on this. A couple of us were, and we'll be able to share some details with you on that at 12:20 to get it, at noon here in about 30 minutes. I'll dive into some A.J. Brown details that you need to know about why he's no longer here and why they had to move on from him that we were able to learn over the weekend. But with all of these things, the post-draft free agency is going to be hugely important. How they go about continuing to try and find plug-and-play pieces to elevate this offense. Because this is not a better football team pre-draft than it is post-draft, which is not something that you would say most people should feel good about. I don't think the Titans are better today than they were on Wednesday, right?
Because A.J. Brown is not on the roster.
A.J. Brown's not on the team. They're not a better football team. It's just indisputable. No matter how I feel, no matter how my position has evolved about why A.J. Brown isn't here anymore, they're not a better football team. There's no possible way that they could be. Yet, we will see how things play out. You won't know until October whether your football team is substantially improved or not, in all likelihood, and that's provided health. But with all these different things, there's definitely a theme that I think they stuck to through the draft process. And I've known this about them as an organization, certainly since Vrabel and John have been here. John has certainly drafted to a certain type, a certain identity that they want to have, which is great, because not a lot of teams have an identity, or teams can say that they have an identity, but their draft habits, their roster construction process, that may tell you otherwise. I want you to hear from John Robinson in just a second. I'm going to let you hear from John Robinson on the offensive players that they drafted, because I had a question that I wanted to get his opinion on from the process that they went through. But what I got to tell you first is that you need to get involved in this really, really cool thing that 104.5 The Zone is doing. That is the Champions Corner at the Iroquois Steeplechase coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm hosting it. So this is the 81st running of the Iroquois Steeplechase, presented by Bank of America on Saturday, May the 14th. It's at Percy Warner Park. This is going to be my first time at Steeplechase, but those of you who are locals, who are native Nashvillians, you know what a kick-ass event this is and how long it's been since we've been able to do it the right way. We have an all-inclusive tailgate for you to come and hang out with me and a bunch of other people during the race itself. You can make the tailgating a breeze by purchasing tickets to the all-new Champions Corner. It's 21 and up, and it gives you sight lines on the outside rail, complimentary food and beverage throughout the day. You don't have to bring anything, which is half the battle when you go to events like this. You don't want to do that. We will provide it for you, so no, you don't have to lug your cooler around, no tents. We have the food. We've got it all covered. For more info or to purchase tickets, visit 1045thezone.com/events today. So I wanted to know from John Robinson, what is the type that you guys are continuing to draft towards on offense? Because this class seems to value play strength. Think about the let's make it 5, minus the tackle. Think about the 5 offensive players that they drafted on this football team. Treylon Burks, Malik Willis, Hassan Haskins from Michigan, a running back. You've got Chig Okonkwo, the Maryland tight end, and Kyle Phillips. in the 5th round out of UCLA, wide receiver, probably going to play slot and punt return. What do all those players have in common if you've been paying attention to the draft process? Play strength. Kyle Phillips is I think he's 5'11", wide receiver. 5'11", 189 pounds. They finally drafted outside their type, right? It's not Nick Westbrook-Akina. It's not A.J. Brown. It's not Corey Davis. It's not Julio Jones. Not these big, physically overwhelming, know they're going to run block their ass off wide receivers who are a certain mold. Kyle Phillips is not them. Kyle Phillips is also not a straight line burner. You wanted the Titans to add speed at wide receiver. They did not do that outright, but they drafted to their type in this way. All those 5 guys that I just named, quarterback included, they are hard as hell to tackle. They are difficult to bring down. Does that sound familiar to you? Does that sound like anything that you've seen on a football field, on a professional field of play from the Tennessee Titans in years past? Whether it's Jonnu Smith, Delaney Walker, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, obviously Derrick Henry running through a mother bleeper's face mask. Like, that's how these things go. So when I asked John about this, I thought he gave a pretty insightful answer about what it is that they look for and why it is that they continue to stay with that type. Because what I learned about this football team after this weekend is that regardless of how long Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry have here together on this roster, they're going to continue to run the damn football. They're going to continue to play this style of the game. They are going to continue to want to be bigger, faster, and stronger than you, but not just say it, like actually get the players to do it. That's who the Tennessee Titans are. It's similar, in theory, to the Baltimore Ravens. Even as Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson are clearly dissimilar quarterbacks, the Ravens play to a style, to a type. They have an identity. They're consistent with it. And that's exactly what I wanted to know from John Robinson when we spoke to him on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think that it's as the game wears on, if you can play a tough, physical, downhill style offensively, I think that tends to wear on opponents some, and hopefully you can find enough points there late in the game when we continue to play with the effort and finish that we preach extensively here, and hopefully kind of wear some teams down.
So that's John Robinson talking about why they draft to that mold. Play strength. And looking at this, right, this is one of the bigger overarching questions about the Titans. How much do they change? How do they avoid scoring 16 points in a playoff game? How do they adapt to the times that they currently live in? Now, through some form or fashion, I think you will see that adaptation come. I think Malik Willis is a living testament to that. But I think Hassan Haskins, who you watch him on film, and he is again going to run through your bleeping face mask. And he's going to do it over and over and over again. Chigakonkwo is going to physically overwhelm you. Kyle Phillips, the wide receiver out of UCLA, he's not going to physically overwhelm you, but he's going to make damn sure that he finds the sticks and takes at least 2 tackles before you bring him down. He is elusive in that way, but also understands how to play through contact.
See his tape against Derek Stingley in that season opener, LSU against UCLA.
The touchdown reception, the catch and run touchdown that he had on Derek Stingley, where he gets to the sideline, you think he's going to get tackled out of bounds. He breaks a couple of tackles and just keeps on rolling. Like that, to me, screams Titans football. And this is the existential, we called it an existential crisis, whether you want to consider it a crisis or not, whatever. But they bring this downhill game, and they're going to continue to play that style. I want you to hear from Hassan Haskins, the Michigan running back, who had, I think it was 5 touchdowns against Mike Vrabel's Ohio State Buckeyes in Michigan, getting their first win against Ohio State over with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach. This was Hassan Haskins when we spoke to him on Saturday about how it is that he fits in this downhill running scheme.
Yeah, we do a lot of power schemes and stuff like that. Downhill run, that's my game. I can do it all, but I feel like it's my the best part of my game. I'm trying to run down here, run through your face, and get them yards. So all them yards count.
All the yards count. Now, this was somebody who he doesn't have a tackle for loss on his resume.
And he had the 6th most carries in college football last season.
Workhorse. No matter who they add from a coaching standpoint, like Tim Kelly, for example, passing game coordinator, you think you're going to run a bunch of 11 personnel next year? I would tell you probably not. I would say that you would continue to play in your 2 tight end sets, your 12 personnel as your base offense, and then you can evolve your passing game off of that as they are wont to do. Can Tim Kelly give you some new principles, a different set of eyes to look at things, to evaluate what works and what doesn't, and how they can be more efficient as an offense? Of course. That's exactly what Jim Schwartz was brought in to do on defense. A different title, but the same in concept. Who they are isn't changing. How they do it is what we're going to continue to keep an eye on. That's one of the biggest overarching storylines about these Tennessee Titans heading into the 2022 season. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Now, one of these draft selections, one of the 9, we have not discussed. Nashville native, Tennessee's own, Theo Jackson. You're going to hear from him coming up next. Okay. 615-737-1045. Welcome back to the show. Jump in if you like. Talking about this Titans draft class. And one in particular that I thought is just a tremendous story. Now, what they do on the football field will ultimately matter more than the human interest element of this, but this is a pretty unique situation. It's not every day. Kevin Byard's probably the most recent example of a local product, quote unquote, even though Kevin's not from Middle Tennessee product coming to the Titans, turning it into an all-pro player as a third-round pick. Now, I don't want to put those expectations on Theo Jackson, but it's really cool to see a kid from Overton High School commit to the University of Tennessee, come off his most productive season under a new coaching staff as one of the players who stuck it out. Because there's a bunch of attrition. Theo Jackson didn't have to stay at UT and did, and was rewarded by the way that the new defensive coaching staff, headed up by Tim Banks, was able to deploy him and make him a more productive player within that scheme. Help that defense. They needed Theo Jackson last year. Now we understand that the way that the Tennessee secondary looked at the end of the year against Purdue was not the way that that defense had kind of helped keep them alive throughout the course of the regular season. So, maybe that's the recency bias that people have. But Theo Jackson playing at Overton, going to UT, and then getting drafted to play professionally with the Tennessee Titans. I mean, he was teary-eyed. He was teary-eyed when he got on the Zoom call with us. I thought it was pretty interesting, though, because to look at him, you're immediately trying to figure out, okay, what can he do outside of special teams? Because that's where you're going to go as a sixth-round pick. Special teams is going to be primary, and you have to find ways to stick on a roster. Just because you were drafted in the sixth round, basically from fifth round on, you're not safe on an NFL roster come cutdown day. It's just the nature of the business. So Theo Jackson, I wanted to know how he felt he was made more productive and more comfortable in the system that UT ran under Tim Banks. And I thought his answer was pretty detailed in a good way.
I think it was just the scheme change. It kind of allowed me to be more free. And then our playbook was a little bit easier. So, I can focus on what call I have to make, and I can focus on, like what the offense could be doing. And most of the time, I watched a lot of film. So when I guess right most of the time. So, that kind of helped me out to get that production.
So that's Theo Jackson when we spoke to him via Zoom on Saturday.
Could play the nickel, could play safety, could play in the slot. Huge reason why Tennessee broke a program record for single-season TFLs in the 109 range. I want to say it was over 100. He had 9 or 10 himself, and he was the only DB that was a draft prospect to play in that Music City Bowl. Alontae Taylor did not play, so Tennessee was obviously shorthanded in that game. Theo Jackson just wasn't enough to shore up or preventing Purdue from throwing 500-plus yards and 5 touchdowns. But his body of work over the course of the season, and maybe his most impressive play in 2021 with the ball in his hands, did not count. It was sort of the six, right? The returned kick 6 against Pitt that he ran back almost 100 yards for a touchdown that got called back due to a hold. But I imagine that play still stands out on tape when people are looking at him in the lead up to the NFL draft. So versatility is what he brought in 2021, and no one on Tennessee's roster on defense made a bigger jump from 2020 to 2021 than Theo Jackson.
They played him close to the formation in a way that he could have a greater impact under Tim Banks.
He was constantly in the backfield.
And he spoke to that on a regular basis. They blitzed this guy a ton. And so when you're looking for different ways that the Titans can bring pressure without blitzing, consider what is a part of their core DNA. Where you see Elijah Molden coming on a blitz, or David, it's not a blitz, but on a 4-man pressure from a different position. Things that drive you crazy are Harold Landry and Bud Dupree in coverage. But if it throws the offense off for a hot second and you have players who can execute, that's a big part of the personnel decisions that are made. If Theo Jackson is to make an active roster and then be active for game day, you know and you have seen on tape that he can provide to you that element if he gets in the game. And that I really liked as far as what Theo Jackson brings to this draft class outside of just being a really damn cool story. It was funny. We were talking to Jimmy Wyatt. Jimmy local legend. Jimmy, Father Ryan grad. Lucas does the high school games and can speak to the rivalry or historic rivalry between Overton and Father Ryan. It seems like that's not quite as strong as it used to be, perhaps not when Jimmy was there.
No, they're in different divisions. Overton and Metro, D1, and Father Ryan private school D2 sector.
Yeah. But with it was funny. We're trying to get something out of Jimmy because Theo Jackson picked off Vanderbilt. This is the first Vanderbilt, or was it pick 6 that he had against Vanderbilt
this past season?
I believe he had an interception against Vandy. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and check
or not. But it was funny because this is the first game that the first Vandy Tennessee game Jimmy has missed ever in his career of going to these games. He always finds a way to get there on Thanksgiving weekend.
It was the 5th play from scrimmage. Yeah, pick 6.
Pick 6. Yeah. So I was kind of trying to egg Jimmy on to see if he was harboring any ill will for the volunteer that jumped on his roster.
So Jimmy will just attack him in the media availability.
Now listen, if you
out the gate,
if you provoke Wyatt, he will come for you. It takes a lot. I've tried, but I'm just irritating enough to get that out of Jimmy, I think.
He had a big game on that day. 55-yard pick 6, his last day in Neyland Stadium. 4 TFLs, a pass breakup, a couple QB hurries. Yeah, versatile player, Theo Jackson.
No slight against the team that just down the road from us on West End, but Theo Jackson kind of had Vandy's number.
I can't imagine the surreal moment for him, right? And it looked that way.
He's from Antioch. He said that he was not at his parents' home. I can't remember. I think he said he was at his uncle's place. He had 60 family members all decked out because they all had Titans gear.
Yep.
His uncle is a suite holder at Nissan
That's
Stadium.
right. He said he grew up going to games.
He's a Titans fan. He was straight up. He wasn't like, I won't say bawling is too strong a word, but he was clearly.
He was in disbelief.
A little dusty.
He could not believe what had just happened. How many players get to do that in any state? Be born, grow up, be a fan of a team, go play for the in-state university, and then come back and get drafted by the team you grew up rooting for in your hometown. That doesn't happen.
I mean, I'm sure there are instances that we are not privy to, because Robinson said when we talked to him at the end of Saturday's round that he said that Theo kind of started a run on local products going to like hometown teams or something like that. I didn't have the opportunity to go back through the draft order, but like
interesting.
It would be super rare. High school, college, pro, all in the state of your youth and your birth, right? It can have happened a ton. Now, what we need to discuss coming up next is whether this football team is better or worse than the team that went into the 2022 NFL draft. Your phone calls are welcome, and we have yet to discuss the new details that we have reported out on the A.J. Brown situation. We'll do that too. 615-737-1045 is how you join us. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. NFL Draft Weekend in the rear view. The Tennessee Titans brought in 9 new players over the course of 3 days in Las Vegas, including landing Liberty quarterback Malik Willis in the 3rd round on Friday. Titans then made 5 picks on day 3, a couple on defense, including one in-state prospect, former John Overton High School and Tennessee defensive back Theo Jackson, taken with the 204th pick in the 6th round. The Titans grabbed linebacker Cade Cunningham out of Ole Miss with the final pick of the 2022 NFL Draft. Big weekend for Georgia football. A record 15 players taken over the course of the weekend. And another NFL news as of this morning, multiple reports that the Saints expected to sign safety Tyrann Mathieu, former LSU star, returns to Louisiana. Coming up tonight, some more NBA playoff action as the Grizz came up short in Game 1 at home against the Warriors yesterday. Ja Morant, 1 assist shy of a triple-double, but still falls in a 117-116 thriller in the Western Conference semifinals. More conference semifinals happening tonight. The Sixers and Heat play Game 1 in the East at 6:30, and the Mavs and Suns tip off in the West at 9 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Monday. Welcome in, welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us so far, we're grateful for that. Lucas is back there making it happen. If you want to make it happen on your end, you can do that. 615-737-1045 is the number that you call. 615-737-1045 is the number. Now, Lucas is already in my ear. I haven't gotten to the part where I say he's back. Well, I did say you're back there making it happen. You've already thrown me out of order. What are you in my ear about? What do you want?
I just made an egregious mistake in the update that I would like to remedy. When saying the Titans took an Ole Miss linebacker.
I was gonna correct you, but I said, you know what? I say stupid things on the air all the time. Now, that's not a stupid thing. That's just a slip-up. But yes, go ahead and make your correction.
The Titans did not draft former Oklahoma State guard Cade Cunningham. They drafted former Ole Miss linebacker Chance Campbell.
And nor was he the final pick in the NFL draft, as you suggested. He was not Mr. Irrelevant. He was a 6th-round selection. In fact,
I did not say. I said the Titans' final pick, not the final pick.
I heard it differently. I think you screwed up all over the place. That's what I think.
Other than that, it was great.
The only reason I'm saying that is because I took a picture of you doing your Nashville Soccer Show broadcast. I said, look at the little guy go. Made me very happy. You guys killed it. For 2 hours pregame ahead of the GEODIS Park home opener yesterday. And then immediately the tweets start, look at him. He's coming for your job. And not look at the little guy go. Are you sweating? Yeah, but that's only because it's hot outside. Back off.
It was a beautiful day yesterday.
Yeah, honestly, it was perfect. We'll spend some more time because today is obviously heavy draft, and we're going to have one of the rookies on the radio show on Wednesday. I will have to keep you informed as to who we will have, but as we get closer to rookie minicamp and as guys start to filter into town and get at least a little settled and situated, we'll be able to keep you updated on that. So we'll talk draft all week long, but at some point we got to talk about our day at GEODIS Park, other than what Tony was able to give us, because I think that is worth the time. But as we sit here today, 2 days removed from the NFL draft, 9 selections, 6 offense, 3 defense, 7 original picks. Well, 5 original picks, 2 compensatory, 7 picks turned into 9 players. Less A.J. Brown. There's a lot of different stuff there that you have to analyze. But as I sit here, no one can convince me that they're a better football team. You can't do it. If you think you can, I would invite your participation. But the Titans are not a better football team yet. You cannot lose the caliber of player that AJ is and improve. You just can't. unless you replace him with 2 more AJs, right? And there's not 2 guys like that lying around. That's why he's making $25 million a year. It's pretty rare. The players that they have added are not enough. And frankly, I don't know that they are going to be of huge impact in 2022 specifically. I do not expect, and we will see, but I would be shocked if all of a sudden Malik Willis is beating Ryan Tannehill out for the starting job. Nobody has that expectation today. I don't know that Nicholas Petit-Frere, the right tackle out of Ohio State that they took in the 3rd round, I don't know that he's going to be your starter at right tackle. I don't know if that means Dylan Radins is going to start at guard. We have no idea, other than the fact that the depth is currently perilously thin behind them at this point. 3 new wide receivers, 2 through the draft, 1 through free agency. Robert Woods, the veteran, not ready to participate yet. ACL recovery. Treylon Burks, who will do his best to ride out what remains of the A.J. Brown bleep storm. And Kyle Phillips, who is likely going to be your starting slot. Apologies to the Mason Kinsey zealots who continue to populate my mentions. Chigakonkwo, I don't know that he's going to be Jonnu out the gate. Jonnu wasn't Jonnu out the gate. It took him a little while. He's a raw prospect with huge athletic upside and is a very, very good system fit. He's not your starting tight end. That's Austin Hooper. And that guy had to take a pretty significant discount based on what tight ends around the league were getting because he's coming off a couple of disappointing seasons himself. So as we sit here today, the Tennessee Titans are not a better football team. But there is a path forward that I think is fascinating. Where they need to improve, of course, is on offense as far as their stability is concerned. Explosive plays in the passing game. Keeping the quarterback upright. There's so much there that we do not know whether Treylon Burks, Austin Hooper, Chigakonkwo, and Nicholas Petit-Frere are going to make a substantial difference one way or the other. You knew that you were paying Bud Dupree to come in and help elevate your pass rush to the next level. You knew that when you signed Roger Saffold a couple of years ago that was going to be an immediate plug-and-play player on the offensive line. You paid premium for those 2 guys, and you've gotten your money's worth so far. We'll see what Bud Dupree has to – well, I can't say you've gotten your money's worth with Bud just yet, but given that Bud's cap hit was super low in year 1, yeah, I'd probably say you got your money's worth because you're going to make a whole hell of a lot this year. The thing that we cannot account for, that of course is the biggest differentiation between 2021, the team in that season, last season, and the 2022 team, is health. How these guys hold up, the sustainability of the players that they've added, whether A.J. Brown, it's fair to call him injury prone or just that he had injuries subsequently that derailed him throughout the course of the last couple of seasons. Those are the kind of things that we cannot predict. But they still have a lot of work to do to make this a better football team than it was in 2021. And as I look ahead at free agency, what remains of NFL free agency, there's a lot of intriguing prospects that they can add to make a difference. Whether they will continue to spend money or move money around, because they're still pretty tight up against it. And don't tell me that the Julio Jones money is going to be available June 1st. If you're waiting until June 1st for free agents, you're not getting very good free agents in the post-draft cycle. That money is for rookies, so you can pay them, and for an injury reserve pool, so that if somebody gets hurt, you can add more players. As you look at the guys who are available currently on the open market right now, there is one name in particular that I still think makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. I think that Will Fuller, at 28 years old, on a prove-it deal, would be well worth the Tennessee Titans' time. Interior offensive line-wise, there's a couple of interesting prospects that may make sense, but I don't know that you're getting a starter at this point. You can still get a starting wide receiver out of this group. So if Traylon Burks or Kyle Phillips can't give you what you need right out of the gate, you can still find ways to improve your offense. Lucas, you're making a face at me like you smell something bad.
Carry on.
Wait, is there something going wrong back there? Something on fire?
Everything's wrong.
Smoke?
No, it's all good.
Smoke arising from the production studio? Okay, anytime Lucas makes a face, I get concerned. Are they a better football team in your estimation? If you can make the case, we'd invite you to do so. 615-737-1045. Let's start with Andy, who thinks I'm dead wrong. Andy and Donaldson. Hello, Andy.
I probably overstated it a little bit. Hello, Buck. Not necessarily dead wrong, but I think really leaning into the negative.
Okay.
When you say that, and just opinion, of course.
No, sure.
When you say the Titans are not better, I guess I want to know versus what, because last year, first of all, the Tannehill, everybody just waiting for something to happen for us to bring in another quarterback. I just can't wrap my head around, because we're just doing, what have you done for me lately? I saw a team bring people in off the streets all over the place and end up with that number one seed in the AFC last year.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing we saw of Ryan, not so great. But I don't think that that's the extent of his capability. I just don't think that that's necessarily been proven. A.J. Brown didn't want to be here or he'd be here.
Sure.
At my job, and we talk about it being a business, I don't want people here that don't want to be here, because that makes my job more difficult. And I understand football is quite different. But just regarding the attitude and the desire, A.J. needs to be somewhere where he gets thrown the ball all day long, because that's his skill set and he's very good at it. I believe that bringing back the people that we are that were hurt, bye-bye Julio, bringing in this Traylon kid with some excitement, I fail to see where you believe that they're insistently worse team than they were last year, considering what they did with what they had and what we're starting the year with this year.
And I appreciate your perspective, Andy. Whether he's a malcontent, what's the Mike Tomlin line? We want players, not prisoners, or something like that, or we want something, not hostages. I think that was the line around the Le'Veon Bell. It's a very Mike Tomlin quote, Lucas. Perhaps you could look it up for me so I'm not speaking incorrectly here. But whether A.J. Brown was malcontent or not, whether he dragged it out for 3 months or 6 months like we talked about with Mike Keith, you're not better for having lost him. And here's the thing. He may not do well in Philly. I was on WIP, the Eagles radio station, like, what 104.5 The Zone here is in Nashville to Titans fans. I did a radio hit on WIP in Philadelphia on Saturday before I went to the facility in day 3, and they were skeptical. They were skeptical for a variety of reasons. Now, we talked about some of the mental health stuff, and we talked about the Philadelphia sports market, mostly because, Lucas, can you think of two very, very recent and relevant examples of two athletes in Philadelphia who have struggled with issues regarding mental health? Because I can.
Well, one of them's in Washington.
Yeah.
And Carson Wentz.
Well, let's go 3 then.
Well, Wentz was the locker room deal, right?
Wentz is different. Ben Simmons?
Sure. Okay. I thought you were keeping it to the Eagles. Okay.
No, I'm
Ben
talking
Simmons, yeah.
Philly sports market. Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz. These are two very, very well-documented, overly covered situations of professional athletes who have struggled with mental health and who have faltered in Philadelphia. He's getting paid. He was going to be on the books for $4 million this year. When that price point goes up to 25, there is going to be an expectation that he's a $25 million a year wide receiver. And if he plays in 13 games, Eagles fans are going to drag him. He may have had a Hall of Fame career as a Titan and may not succeed in Philadelphia. I don't think that the Titans couldn't have found a way to make it work with AJ. But we'll get into that coming up next. Tony is in Nashville, wants to chime in. Hello, Tony. All right. Tony is not in Nashville. He's out in the ether. He's lost in space. Those are kind of my favorite calls. Just the ones where there's just nobody there. They've been waiting for 46 minutes, and all of a sudden, poof. Okay, what we're going to give you coming up next is new details on why A.J. Brown is no longer a player for the Tennessee Titans. Because, when I came in here on Friday, I was pissed off about the idea that they gave away what likely was their best offensive player. And I'll tell you why it makes more sense to me coming up next.
The Buck Reising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go to springhillac.com.
Indeed. So, as we kind of put a bow on the initial draft reaction, we'll have much more in-detail stuff over the course of the coming weeks, and practices will begin. Rookie minicamp is on the horizon. In fact, I think that's a little less than 2 weeks from now. So we'll be able to get into that, and we'll keep you updated with player availability as they do become available, and we'll see who we might be able to get on the show as far as the rookies later this week. That'll be fun. But with all of this stuff is A.J. Brown. Now, when we came in here on Friday, you guys know that I went, I don't know, is it fair to say scorched earth?
Yes.
I think I'm pretty reasonable most days. I feel that I was unreasonable on Friday.
You said there is no way that this could turn out to be a good move by John Robinson, which I did not agree with.
Well, I still kind of feel that way. I still feel that trading AJ is bad business, but I now have new information at my disposal. So, when we did the show Friday, I read Teron Davenport's article. Teron had talked to A.J. Brown. A.J., who, it should be noted, and this is fair criticism of us, by the way, because we should have considered the fact that a 24-year-old kid that can't keep a tweet posted up on Twitter without deleting it for more than 30 seconds may not know all of the intricate details of his contract negotiations. That's bad business on our part. But AJ told Teron that the Titans had made him an offer, $16 million, incentives up to 20, and that AJ would have come back for 22 a year. I saw that, and I had reached out and said, hey, is this accurate? Because I'm about to do 3 hours of radio, and how somebody responds to this is very much going to dictate how Friday's show goes. And the company line perpetually is, we don't discuss contract details publicly. Okay, fine. So I used the information that was at my disposal. Everybody was. And then, by the time I got to the facility on Friday, say about 6 o'clock, I was armed with a very, very different set of information that made this situation make a whole hell of a lot more sense. Here's why. What we had discovered over the course of the last couple of days is that AJ never intended to come back here unless they broke the bank. An offer north of what he got from Philadelphia. Almost $30 million more in guaranteed money than what he got from the Eagles. Almost $10 million more than he wanted or that he had been offered on an average annual basis. AJ's negotiation process got so convoluted by the people that were charged with representing him. And listen, AJ's not blameless here, because in Teron's article, AJ said it wasn't my fault. And you can't do that. Now, this will be a learning process for him, I imagine. AJ will learn at some point in his life that deleting tweets doesn't mean that they don't exist anymore, that the words just evaporate. No, we have screenshots forever. Welcome to the internet. And at some point, your words are going to have consequences. The contract details that AJ gave Teron were inaccurate. And what AJ's representation wanted was well north of the $25 million a year, nearly $80 million guaranteed. Lucas, look up for me what Harold Landry got in guaranteed money this year if you could, because I believe it's just a bit north of 52.
It was an $87.5 million contract.
I believe it was $52 million guaranteed, but I would ask you to fact check me on that just for the purposes of numerical accuracy here, because if we can't do math on air, we can sure as hell read the numbers right. But you're talking about a player in Harold who they paid, who they gave the bag for, who met the market value at a premium position, much like the wide receiver market is currently doing. They gave him the money that he earned because Harold, one, is a, soldier for the cause and hasn't missed a game in 3 years and also produces at a high level. $52 million?
$35 million guaranteed at signing.
At signing, but what was the total guarantee? Because I believe the total guarantee is north of 50. Because producer Reed made that error yesterday. $80 million guaranteed. $52.5 million guaranteed. So nearly $30 million more than what they gave Harold. He had stopped talking to them in the weeks leading up to voluntary offseason program beginning. And at that time, his representation had reached out and had told the Titans he doesn't touch the grass unless he has a new contract. They took that as a sign that they needed to be negotiating, which is why when Diana Rossini came on the radio show about the same time, she said that she believed that AJ would get the contract done first of all of the rookie contract wide receivers because you know what? At least they were talking. Then, when the Titans made their counter, they didn't hear from AJ's side of things for quite some time. And that's when the representation for A.J. Brown hit up the Titans and said $80 million guaranteed and substantially north. My understanding was $29 million average annual salary, which is absurd. Absurd. He's not Devontae Adams. He's not Tyreek Hill. Hell, he's not even going to be remembered as a Titans wide receiver because he was only here for 3 years and only played a full season one of those 3 years. This is not to diminish AJ. I'm not sitting here calling him a liar. Please do not twist my words. But the context of that, requesting a trade and then saying, trade me or this with completely unreasonable and untenable demands makes for a totally different version of the conversation than what we were having on Friday. $16 million a year said to me the Titans didn't want to keep him. Hearing that he requested a trade or $80 million guaranteed, that makes me feel a whole hell of a lot differently about the circumstance.
So I think Titans fans hear that and they think, okay, but that's not what he got in Philadelphia. So why is it okay to take that number in Philadelphia and not in Nashville? But what you're saying is that was on AJ's side of things as far as representation, that they weren't willing to meet that number in Nashville, or the Titans not necessarily willing to meet that number.
20 was not the final stop for the Titans, but there is a substantial gulf between 29 and 20. 25 is that point. 25 is still high for AJ. What he told Tehran is that he would have played for 22. My understanding is he did not express that to the Titans.
That they didn't even get the opportunity to reach that point in negotiations.
They haven't talked to AJ for the better part of 3 weeks. And why Mike Vrabel and John Robinson looked the way that they did after they went into Thursday never intending to trade him. When John says that materialized in 18 to 20 hours, that's because they didn't want to be held hostage and said, okay, we got to do this because this will drag out for months. It still hurts. You can still think it's a bad decision to trade him. I still think it's a bad decision to trade him because, they still had a year of team control. Whether it drags out into ways that are distracting during training camp, whatever, figure it out. I still think AJ's a talented player, but $80 million guaranteed or trade me? Buddy, piss off.
My question is, how can things sour so much to that point of $80 million guaranteed or trade me? If you told us that was the conversation a month ago, nobody would have believed that with the perceived relationship between A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans.
That's a question for his agent. We may never have the answer to that.
That comes as a shock to people, I think.
That he requested a trade and then said $80 million guaranteed or trade me.
And not even the opportunity, it sounds like, to meet that number of 25 a year, $57 million guaranteed, which is what he got in Philadelphia.
I don't have the timeline for where the Deebo Samuel's mom's leaked Instagram, or I guess it's not leaked, it's public, but where Deebo Samuel's mom's Instagram live video factors into this, where Debo and AJ are talking about the contract details of the 49ers and the Titans publicly, saying that they will not exceed $20 million for either of those players. I don't know where that factors in. I don't know if that is something that the agent discussed with them, told to them, and said, this is not a good deal for you. I don't know if the agent is trying to make good on deals that he did not necessarily, or that the team of agents, it's not just one individual at CA, it's a team. Mike Williams, I think, what did Mike Williams sign for? Is 3 years, what, 60 mil?
I believe so. I'll double check that.
Mike Williams.
But it was about 20 a year, yeah.
Mike Williams probably could have gotten more, right? Mike Williams also represented by CAA. I don't know if there was a kind of make good thing in the middle of all of this because of the way that contracts had gone. This is part of this, what I'm talking about now. What I have given you are reported details. What I'm now talking to you about is speculation, because I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know I can't tell you what's in AJ's head. All I know is we've talked about this. You're dealing with a hugely emotional 24-year-old Gen Z athlete who, by the way, has just spent a full year with Julio Jones, who famously likes to renegotiate contracts with multiple years left on his deal, so much so to where he completely ruined the relationship between him and Arthur Blank as one of the historically best players in the history of the franchise. They had to ship him off. There's a lot of this that only AJ can answer, and I don't know that AJ knows all the details. Because I watched a video from Logan Ryan this weekend where Titans fans remember Logan Ryan. He did a weekly show on this station for a period of time. You know what Logan Ryan to be a well thought out, very meticulous individual.
Was big in the community.
Irrelevant, but yes. Logan Ryan put out a video on one of these I Am Athlete podcasts or something like that where he's talking about, I have my agent through all three of my contracts walk me through how he does these things. I have my agent do that so I can learn, and I can talk to my agent in detail and with confidence, with trust about the deals that he is negotiating on my behalf. Logan Ryan represents a much smaller percentage of the NFL population. For the rest of the players who say, I've got an agent who handles those things, get me the deal done, here's X, Y, and Z what I want, make it happen, or else. AJ at 24 is probably not, just based on what I know of AJ, probably not as buttoned up on the details of his contract as somebody like Logan Ryan at a much more advanced age with much more wisdom in his NFL career. This changes the conversation around A.J. Brown entirely. Again, they're not a better team for having traded him. But the reason why he's here, buddy, don't tell me it wasn't my fault. 615-737-1045. Jake is in Boston. Hello, Jake.
Buck, technically, Rossini was right about A.J. getting the contract first.
Yes, you know what? It was funny, Jake. She texted me while we were on the air on Friday. I think I said this. She sent me a text. Hey, remember when I went on your show and said AJ was going to get a deal done? That was fun. Things change very quickly in the NFL.
Are you going to have her on this week?
I had texted Diana this morning. She's pretty up against it with her television schedule, but she'll be on in short order, if not this week.
Yeah, so what I was going to ask about it. I think you should, and if you don't, she wrote a really good kind of her purview on it with some of the updated information from TD and obviously stuff with her sources on yesterday.
Yeah, no, on the diary, I subscribed to it.
Yeah, so my question on that was, and you kind of covered it in the lead in here, right? But that delta between what he wound up getting from Philly, what he was apparently asking for to stay in Nashville, and obviously the Titans company line of we went into Thursday not expecting to trade him. You've seen Robinson, obviously nobody the caliber of AJ, but you've seen Robinson ship off plenty of guys who were, maybe not being the most professional in certain instances. Do you think there was a point where Robinson just kind of had it and was like, screw it?
Yeah, Thursday about 18 hours before,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, really, to that point, people ask me, and I can't speak for Mike Vrabel, right? We played some audio from Mike on Thursday night. People made assumptions about how pissy he was or how not pissy, whatever, whether Mike Vrabel was upset with the circumstance. And I can't speak for Mike, but if you're Mike Vrabel and you've just been dragged a little bit by a player who you did nothing but support and who a couple of weeks ago you went on a nationally syndicated television and radio program saying, as long as I'm the head coach here, he's not on the trading block. Without roster control the way that Mike does, would you not be embarrassed? Would you not be hurt? Would you not be hugely uncomfortable with the situation? I don't know if A.J. Brown and Mike Vrabel and John Robinson have had contact since he's become a Philadelphia Eagle. All I know is on Thursday, my understanding was that they tried to reach out to him to wish him well. I don't think A.J. picked up the phone. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Omar calls us from Houston today. Hello, Omar.
Hey, how you doing, Buck?
I'm well, thank you.
All right. Yeah, I was out there at the draft. It was a very good experience out there. My wife's from Vegas, so I went out there. But, hey, I got on here because I wanted to point out a detailed issue. We were talking about A.J. Brown here. And, you know, I remember A.J. had tweeted out and said, Jesus, take the wheel. I think when he said that, that's when his agent pulled the trigger and told him, like, hey, you need to be aggressive here if you want to get this money. You know, it's this new wave thing where I think the NFL players are starting to try to take their own destiny into going after the bag, as they say, you know, and A.J. Brown's personality is just a little bit too big for what, you know, the Titans organization is trying to be, which is, you know, for the boys, you know, and his personality was too big. He's gone. I think John Robinson's a genius at playing his chess piece at the right moment. He was clutch and got us the best deal. And I feel like the future, Malik Willis and Derrick Henry and everything that we got going, it's going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay with this nasty defense.
Now, here's what I want to discuss. As far, well, one, I can't speak to when specifically that went down with AJ. I don't have the answer to that question. But in the same way where Kyler Murray, another CAA client, who else deleted social media posts this week or this offseason? Debo?
Debo did.
Debo, deletion of social media. AJ taking Tennessee out of the Twitter bio, right? These are, as lame as you may think they are in 2022 NFL contract discourse, these are strategies employed by agencies to help their client gain leverage, gain public opinion. What did it do? It started it. When AJ deleted Tennessee, just something as simple as deleting Tennessee, all caps, out of his Twitter bio, what happened? There was intense public outcry. Why isn't this guy signed yesterday? Why are you even risking this? Silly as it may be, it accomplished its goal. It made it more contentious. It started this cycle of, and I don't know when AJ cut off, when the representation reached back out with the untenable contract terms, $80 million guaranteed, nearly $29 million in average annual salary. I don't know how close it was to that point. All I know is it created the toxic effect that it was intended to create. That's how business gets done now. Part of the business gets done now in the NFL. Ed is in Clarksville up next. Hello, Ed.
Good morning. Great afternoon. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Hey, quick question for you. How much do you think that the rise in NFL player salaries is being driven by greedy sports agents?
Well, sure. But, you know, everybody wants their money, right?
It's always been that way, right?
Oh, in college coaching, in NFL coaching hiring, in NFL salaries, MLB. I mean, for God's sakes, in media. Here's the thing, okay? Let me run this through my prism. And this, I'm not doing $100 million deals. But I have representation that negotiates my contracts. Both my contract with 104.5 The Zone and my contract with A to Z Sports. He negotiates my contract, God bless him, Sean Wyman. He gets 10% of my average salary of my annual salary. So he can be the bad guy, and I don't have to be. I don't want to be involved in the emotions of a contract negotiation. A.J. Brown doesn't want to be involved in the emotions of a highly contentious $100 million deal contract negotiation. People who operate on a contracted basis, like media, athletes, coaches, general managers, what have you, they delegate so that you don't have to get caught up in the middle of this thing, and then you can run to Teron Davenport after the fact, and this is not Teron's fault. I would have written it too, and say, it wasn't my fault. Here's what they offer, and quickly skew public opinion. Last call for phone calls. We've got polls to update and a fun show to tell you about tomorrow. That's next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Wrap it up on a Monday here on 104.5 The Zone. Blaine and Mickey are going to continue the conversation through this afternoon. Of course, 3HL from 3 to 6 after them. Anything happening in postseason basketball that we need to pay attention to? I know the Grizzlies lost game 1 last night. I must admit, I did not see a ton of it. I heard it was a hugely dramatic game.
Thriller. Draymond Green. We were obviously at the soccer game, so we both missed it. But I went back, saw some highlights. Draymond Green gets ejected in the first half for maybe a questionable flagrant call and then takes laps around FedEx Forum, hyping up the Memphis crowd.
I love that.
Creating a little bit of animosity, and then went home to talk about it. Skipped the media, went home to talk about it on his podcast. Totally explained himself in every way.
I hate it because that makes people like me irrelevant, but respect to Draymond Green. I love that series. I love that matchup in that series, and we'll continue to monitor that. Preds begin their playoff push tomorrow. Alex Doherty is going to hang out in studio with us, and we will discuss. He had the report, of course, of the actual injury of UC Saros, a high ankle sprain for UC Saros that will cause him to miss several games, several starts at this point as he recovers. Winners and losers of the sports weekend tomorrow as well. Got a couple of things to get into, and we'll hear from some Titans players at the podium. But in the meantime, we have polls to do.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Reising Show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it to you when it gets manufactured. Are the Tennessee Titans better after the 2022 NFL Draft? 60% rather say yes.
60% say yes?
60% say yes.
60% of you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid, man. Relax, okay? It's not the greatest draft in the history of ever.
Well, Andrew says, what position did they get worse at? Wide receiver, maybe? It's not like Julio and AJ tore it up. I'd say we're a better team, but have a lot of young guys that need to step up to prove it.
I think that's silliness that they're a better team after that draft. We have no... One, you cannot definitively say. Two, you lost A.J. Brown. Not a better football team as we sit here today.
Yeah, I mean, saying they're a better team if the young guys step up and prove it.
Could they be a better team in November? Sure. Not a better team today.
What was your favorite pick of the Titans 2022 draft class and why? Mahogany says Malik Willis completely removed all the anguish from the AJ trade for me, made me excited for the future of this team.
Well, that's the bright and shiny new object that a rookie quarterback can be for some people, even if that's, not quite justifiable.
Stephanie says Hassan Haskins, the thought of a backfield with Derrick Henry is awesome. Russell also says it's Malik Willis. Terry says Willis. Timmy says Willis. KB says Burks. I'm biased. I'm from Arkansas, but I enjoy watching him play. I think he's going to surprise some people. Harold says Chig.
He's not going to surprise people. He's a first-round pick. He's a top 20 pick. He better not be a surprise.
He's going to get all the targets.
I was about to say, he's going to win Rookie of the Year out there.
Did the rest of the Titans draft take away some of the pain from the A.J. Brown trade? Goody says it does. Also, the information that he didn't necessarily want to be there anymore does as well. Yeah. But Tomahawk says not at all. When we decide to cut ties with Tannehill, we'll be in QB purgatory for a while. There's a reason Willis couldn't make it at Auburn.
Oh, God, I don't. Between people that think that way and then people who are calling him the next Steve McNair because they drafted another black quarterback. Like, that stuff pisses me off.
Well, we have to take everything Tomahawk says that even remotely involves Auburn or Tennessee with a massive grain of salt.
Yeah, no, completely irrelevant.
What was your experience like at GEODIS Park on Sunday? Daniel says, delightful. I adjusted my expectations considering all the negative press around the parking situation, but I was thrilled with the parking, tailgating, and game experience. I also got to yell Buck at you on my way to the stadium.
Oh, okay. We had a bunch of, by the way, I was really, really flattered at how many people came up and said that they listen to the show and they enjoy the show, or, I love when people come up and say, I don't always agree with you, but you do a good job. It's like, oh, thanks. I say a lot of dumb stuff. But it was really cool to meet a lot of you guys out at the soccer game. And I had a great time, too. Lucas was my sober ride home. And it took us about 45 minutes to get from Berry Hill to downtown Nashville.
Yeah, getting out was tough. Although I did enjoy parking on the Speedway. going around, taking a lap as I found my parking spot.
It's completely arbitrary to everybody listening out.
I enjoy it.
Okay, I'm very happy for you.
Did seeing the environment at GEODIS Park on Sunday make you want to go to the next Nashville SC game? 76% say yes. It's next Sunday at home against Real Salt Lake, a 4 p.m. kick.
It was really cool. Obviously, the first one was historic. There was a lot of bright and shiny things that happened. I can't necessarily guarantee you that the second time around, but it's a cool thing. You're going to want to go see it at least once if you haven't been. And then maybe you go back or maybe you don't. Do what you like. It's entirely up to you. Those the polls?
The polls.
I
don't know what just came out of my mouth. I tried to say those are the polls way too quickly.
What the hell was
those
that?
Polls.
Blaine and Mickey are next.